Howard West was 34 years old from West Philly and enjoying the night with his friend Sahdia Hargrove. The night was supposed to be a Netflix and chill type situation. Howard was a soft-spoken, humble father of two who family members describe as a gentle giant. Sahdia was a local bartender and Howard was a customer she met and grew a friendship with. Sahdia is known to friends and family as a fun-loving spirit but troubled soul who had mental health issues that they say she was working through. In October 2008, she was arrested for aggravated assault. In 2011, she was arrested for disorderly conduct. But by the time 2016 rolled around, she had managed to stay out of trouble and was bartending in Upper Darby. She met Howard West at the bar she worked at, as I said earlier, and they decided to go to a house on the 7,000 block of Clover Lane in Upper Darby. As the two went down to the basement and settled in, Sahdia started to roll a blunt. Exactly what happened next, only Sahdia Hargrove knows for sure, but all we know for a fact is that something went horribly wrong. Upper Darby police were contacted by Delaware County Police at 11:46 p.m. Friday, May 6, 2016, that a man who appeared to be a victim of a severe puncture wound was at Mercy Fitzgerald Hospital in Yaden, and that incident may have occurred in Upper Darby. Upper Darby police officer James Frill subsequently spoke to Yaden officer Nicholas DeLisandro, as well as hospital security officers. Frill was told the victim was driven to the hospital by a woman later identified as Sahdia Hargrove. According to the court affidavit, Hargrove said she and West were at the residence on Clover Lane in Upper Darby and that they went into the basement to smoke a blunt and have sex. She was rolling a blunt when she heard West say, "Ouch," the document states. She said he rolled over on a corkscrew and that she took him to the hospital. Subsequently, Officer Ryan Wisely went to the residence in the 7,000 block of Clover Lane. He spoke to a woman identified in the affidavit as witness number 1. Witness number 1 directed Wisely to the basement where he found a bedroom area. The bed was pushed away from the wall and the sheets and blankets were in disarray. The officer saw a wine bottle opener on the blanket in the middle of the bed, as well as a small bag of suspected marijuana and a blunt on the bed. In the meantime, Frill was told that West had succumbed to his injuries. Through further investigations, authorities learned that West was pulled from the rear basement entrance to the vehicle in which he was transported to the hospital by 3 women, including witness number 1. Witness 1 provided a statement to police. She said she was in the house with her 2 young children when West and Hargrove arrived that Friday around 10:20 p.m. West had been heating food up in the kitchen and preparing to go to the bedroom in the basement with Hargrove. The witness then went to her own bedroom and talked to her boyfriend on her cell phone. She said Hargrove came up to hold her phone charger and then returned to the basement with West. Witness number 1 told police there was no one else in the house other than herself, West, Hargrove, and the 2 young children. Hargrove and West were the only 2 in the basement, she said, according to the affidavit. In her written statement to police, Hargrove said she started making their platters of food and West was lying on his side of the bed. She was sitting on the edge of the bed when she heard him say ouch or ow. She couldn't really remember, and then she saw he was bleeding. She stated that she used 2 fingers and applied pressure to his chest through his shirt. The bleeding stopped and he laid back on his side, but a couple minutes later, he told her he couldn't breathe and his eyes looked as if he was having a seizure, she stated. One of witness number 1's children alerted her that Hargrove was crying and yelling her name. When the witness went to the basement, she saw Hargrove trying to pull the victim up, the affidavit states. When the witness asked what happened, Hargrove responded, "We were fighting." The witness then asked, "Were you playing?" And Hargrove replied, "Yes." The witness described seeing a small amount of blood on West's chest, which she could see staining his wife beater. West was sweating profusely, taking gasps of air, and he would not respond to Hargrove or the witness's attempts to have him sit or stand up. When the witness asked Hargrove to call 911 and request an ambulance, Hargrove stated no, that she would take him to the hospital herself, the affidavit states. As part of the investigation, several members of the hospital's emergency staff were interviewed. They indicated that Hargrove said that the victim had rolled over on a corkscrew while lying on the bed, as I said earlier. A multi-tool consisting of a short blade knife and a corkscrew and a bottle opener was in a closed position when police confiscated it during the search. What appeared to be blood residue was found on the blade of the knife. Hargrove was arrested after Delaware County Assistant Medical Examiner Dr. Bennett Preston determined that West's death was a homicide due to the trajectory of the corkscrew, which came at a backwards, rightwards, and downwards angle at a depth of 2 to 3 inches, according to the autopsy report. Dr. Preston stated that, quote, "It would take a substantial amount of force to penetrate the sternum of the victim's body, and that there is a 0% chance that it occurred the way that Hargrove explains that it did," according to the affidavit. The stabbing instrument fatally pierced West's left lung, sternum, and right ventricle of his heart, according to Preston's findings. The report also noted that West had fresh slash wounds on his arms and abdomen. On May 9th, 3 days after the incident, Sahdia Hargrove was arrested and remanded to the county prison without bail. In June of 2017, a jury was selected, but right before trial was set, Sahdia pleaded guilty to all charges. She addressed the family of 34-year-old Howard West during a plea and sentencing hearing in June of 2017. "I'm so sorry," said Sahdia Hargrove through her tears. "What I did was not intentional. I still love him and I still feel him every day." Hargrove, who was 30 at the time, pleaded guilty before Judge Richard Capelli for one count of third-degree murder. She was sentenced to 15 to 40 years in the state prison under the negotiated plea deal worked out by ADA Brian Dougherty and defense counsel Sean Page. "It didn't have to happen," said one of West's aunts after court. "It was unnecessary. He couldn't have done anything for it to happen. He was too nice," she said. Defendants can challenge a sentence by filing a motion within 10 days. Hargrove claims to have filed her motion on June 21st, 2017 and sent it off from SCI Muncie on June 22nd. But the DA said the envelope containing the motion indicates that it was not actually mailed until June 28th and was not filed until June 29th, rendering it untimely. Hargrove, who is not eligible for early release, said she kept records of all her actions in the case and did not understand why it was filed so late. Hargrove also could not secure a public defender due to the timeliness issue and represented herself in her motion hearing. She argued she should have been given minimum 8 years under the sentencing guidelines, but the DA argued the motion, even if considered, should be denied on its merits because the guidelines in Hargrove's case called for a sentence with a minimum between 12 and 20 years, he argued, and that the sentence was part of a legal, negotiated plea, and that the court is powerless to change it now. Judge Capelli also noted that a public defender opined in a note explaining why he denied representing Hargrove that negotiated pleas are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to withdraw. This case is almost certainly a case of domestic violence. Nothing Sahdia said made sense, as proven by the medical examiner's findings. I think they got into an argument, it got physical, and she stabbed him to death with a corkscrew. Here are some interesting numbers from the FBI. About 62% of female violent offenders had a prior relationship with their victim, such as an intimate, relative, or acquaintance. More than 3 out of 4 female offenders killed a female victim. In 2023, there were 14,327 male murder offenders and only 1,898 female murder offenders in the United States. In 2019, 88% of those arrested for murder and non-negligent manslaughter were male. Women commit almost 70% of property crimes, while men commit around 50%. Female offending is often linked to mental health, substance abuse, or financial and homelessness issues. What we used to call in common language as domestic violence, academia now refers to it as IPV, or intimate partner violence. Studies report that women use much more or physical intimate partner violence, IPV, as men. Most of these studies measure IPV by counting the number of IPV acts over a specified time period, but counting acts captures only one aspect of this complex phenomenon. Most of these studies, however, count the number of acts of IPV over a specified time period and do not further investigate the context of the IPV. To be perfectly clear, the studies I'm referencing only talk about IPV or domestic violence in the sense of any violence. Throwing objects, smacking, spitting, slapping, and yelling are all considered violence in this study. But don't get it twisted, 99% of domestic violence homicides are perpetrated by men, and women make up only 11% of the people convicted for murder in 2022. Myriads of theories explaining women's motivation for physical IPV have been proposed. Feminist theory-based research emphasizes the importance of gender inequity and posits that women use IPV in a self-defense or in response to their partner's pattern of abuse. Family conflict research argues that men and women have similar motivations, which include anger and a desire to resolve disagreements. Still, other researchers contend that, like men, women use physical IPV to exert power and control. These studies referenced are limited and might not reflect reality because, like most studies of this kind, they are measured by self-reporting and accepting those answers as evidence. This is flawed in many ways, but the biggest one is that people lie, full stop. So I never take self-report studies as fact, but it's better data than none. Sahdia Hargrove never explained why she did what she did that night, and there is no evidence that points to Howard West being violent towards her. It's wild getting killed by a bartender with a corkscrew. It just goes to show you have to stay on point at all times. I'm gonna leave it there for now. Thanks for watching American Confidential, and until next time, be safe.